a culmination on my part of about 25 years of thinking about these issues, and combined with Neela's shorter time, she's younger and brighter than me, her work in the sustainability field, and that's sustainability defined broadly, covering environment and organisationally, and indeed personally as well. Now, what we've done is, through evidence we've accumulated over the years and more concentrated way over the last year or two, is gathered a lot of the evidence for enlightened leadership, the kind that Simon described and others at Unilever and Marks and Spencer, who we featured in the book, and the links between this engaging approach where you understand all the stakeholders' contribution and how that can often lead to more success, not just socially and environmentally, but even commercially as well. Now, you could say, so what? There are now hundreds, perhaps thousands of books like that, and most of them had a bigger research budget than ours. But I guess what we have sought to do is be provocative and be a bit different. And we've actually tried to look at, and I know Simon has covered this in his column in the past, some of the reasons as to why bad or exploitative management has been so fashionable in the past 2 decades. And we've come to some similar findings. Now, I'm just a humble journalist, I must admit. I'm not duly qualified in medicine and institutional investment like Raj, so I won't be drawing any analogies with post-coronary arrhythmias, I have to confess. But I do have a few observations that I think seem to be quite original in this field. And one of them actually stems from my days as a reporter and sub-editor. And it was in newspaper and magazine style guides. There's an interesting little detail there when you get to talking about organisations or collections of teams or groups or whatever. And the company is always it in a singular, and it's impersonal. Desk editors get very cross if you refer to it as they. But there is, in all newspapers, a curious exception, which is sports teams, which we are allowed to call they. So Unilever, we say it has a strategy for Asia. With the sports team, to take an example at random, Leeds United, we say they are a great football team. And I nearly kept a straight face to the end of that sentence. So we will accept that the football team we support consists of people, but not the company we work for. Now, it may be a coincidence, but this insistence on the impersonal singular does seem to tie in with the neoliberal concept of the firm as a single mechanistic entity that can be re-engineered or modelled or merged with another. And this is a metaphor that I would argue, having investigated this over the years, has caused a lot of damage, not just to the people who work for them and their customers, but in some cases to the shareholders as well. The theme for this evening is short-termism. Now, short-term performance, of course, does have to be managed. There's no point having grand plans for the future if you run out of cash next quarter. And having helped run a small business, I know all about that. But what I think we mean in the context of this evening is an unhealthy, disproportionate focus on the quarterly result, or the idea that trading in shares hour by hour in companies that compete with one another leads to consistent improvements in some sort of Darwinian struggle. And this doesn't work not just because it's myopic, but because the operating assumptions are deeply flawed, I would argue. They seem to be based on ideas that come from old-fashioned economics, that the firm is a thing and that the economy is a system that obeys laws like fluid mechanics or planetary motion. So I would argue that short-termism is just one of the baleful consequences of the failed business model and its mechanistic metaphors. And because the business model is built on the assumption of a simplistic mechanism, there is this accompanying belief that financial data is the only measure of performance, and almost as if it tracks the performance in real time, like the speedometer or the mileometer in a car. And of course, a lot of economists and business analysts love their transport metaphors, don't they? And another simplistic formula I take issue with is the zero-sum theory of economics, of employee relations, rather. This idea that the more you lower the labour cost, the higher the profits. And this does seem to be deeply ingrained cultural belief. And I do take issue sometimes with pressure groups and the unions on this, where the it takes the form of the social dumping argument, the idea that that lowering the wages and making the workers more insecure automatically boosts margins. Now, I'm not necessarily in favour of low employee regulations, but sometimes the arguments behind them I would question. So when both left and right economists promote the low-wage theory of profit maximisation, it's hardly surprising that there's a lot of low wages. And a situation, I would argue, that actually serves no one any good at all. And in New Normal Radical Shift, we feature a living wage policy by Marks and Spencer in Bangladesh, where not only did the working conditions go up, but actually productivity and profits went up as well, because there was better management. And the economic contribution of management, as Simon has indicated, is woefully underappreciated in the media and in politics. So fixing this is actually quite simple conceptually, but the implications are immense. And I think we will come across fierce opposition, a lot of it subconscious. And I think sometimes you get a partial acceptance. People say the economy is a bit behavioural, or people refer to the people side of management. And I'm still looking for the other side, personally. And I'm worried about going over time. So I wonder if now is the time for some questions.
Yeah, when you use the Leeds United, could you use Preston North End?
I think you could use Leeds in the past tense. Yeah, 1970s, yeah. And Preston North End, a bit further back maybe.
Okay, right.
That was the easiest question I think I've had.
Yeah. I liked your explanation there of the myth that employee, I think it's on the slide, the myth that employee relations are a zero-sum game between the organisation and the worker. I took that. The question I wanted to ask was, is this something also even more fundamental in many ways with the whole way of valuing a business by its some sort of pure financials, in the sense that the two main tools that we have for financial reporting are the balance sheet and the P&L, and that okay in an agricultural economy, okay in a manufacturing or an industrial economy, but absolutely useless, not fit for purpose in a digital one, where people are key, where people's creativity, people's ability to work with others, people's willing to give discretionary energy, that they are completely unfit, in the sense that you've got your biggest asset, but you can't put it on the balance sheet.
Well, it's not only the biggest asset, it's also the one that creates all the others, and that's also missing from the account.
Maybe you can put people on the balance sheet on the liability side.
Well, I think it should be the other way round. I think accounts should fit into the human report, not the other way round.
Okay.
I mean, the accounts of 500-year-old information technology, aren't they? Wasn't it Luca Pacioli in 1494? So it's a bit, it's funny music when people say, oh, the dizzying pace of change in business. I find it the most conservative world, really, in some respects, in their information that they rely upon. Inquiring, as Raj indicated, the categories of different pessimists and so on. The lack of curiosity, really, about the real behavioural dynamics within a complex organisation.
I think the only other bit that was trailing for me is that the actual costs on the P&L are almost always a gross undershoot as far as the real costs of people are concerned.
That's right. Well, they're always a lagging indicator. I was interviewing Hagen Albantian, who is from Mercer. He's very good on human capital, by the way, Raj, really smart. But he still gets companies coming to him for advice and saying they want to cut the wage bill. And in the States, a big thing is health insurance. They want to cut that bill as well. But he says that actually, if you look at it, if you actually analyse it, it can still often be cheaper to have full-time staff on healthy salaries with full medical benefits, because the benefits of higher productivity and engagement and loyalty so outweigh those other savings. But people still think that expense is cost, and it's not really. Real operating cost is actually behavioural. but that is something he still has to educate people on.
Thanks very much, Philip.